Alright, time to get some Vitir farming going on. Got my build set up. I remember how to do this. It's a bit easy, right? It's a bit easy. Just some Jotun in the way. Look, all I have to do is trigger Shadow Refuge and then Feign Neutrality. I'm not very good at the game anymore. No, I did not miss the news a few days ago that indeed we'll be getting information about guild halls at E3. Game director Colin Johansson will be at E3 on June 16th to take part in PC Gamer's PC Gaming Show. This show, for what it's worth, is like reasonably long, and they're sharing the stage with a lot of people, so don't expect too much information. But yes, we are finally hearing about guild halls. Guild halls coming to Guild Wars 2. This is a feature a lot of people are very, very, very excited about, and I kind of wanted to take us today back to Guild Wars 1 to show you guys how ArenaNet did it in the past. You know, it's really valuable to come back to this game to see, even though things have moved on a lot, even though Guild Wars 2 is a very different game, many of the philosophies still line up, and ultimately it's on the same engine. So how did they handle that back then? How did guild halls fit into Guild Wars 1? And I think it's pretty interesting. The feature is, looking back, kind of bare bones. It's not a feature I was always very, very excited about in the first game. One thing that guild halls always really did back there was encourage you, as soon as you got in a guild, you just hang out in the guild hall instance away from everyone else in the whole world, and it was another one of these contributing factors that meant Guild Wars 1 felt very, very empty. I'm a little bit scared about that with Guild Wars 2, but we'll see what ArenaNet does to flesh it out. I will go over pretty much everything Guild Halls contained in the first game, even though I never really did much guild versus guild. So, first of all, it's a social place you could go from anywhere in the world that was kind of like a central hub. See, while I'm here in Kaineng City, if I were to open my big map, I only really get to see Canthan locations, and I can only travel to other Canthan locations that my character's already been to. So this character, for example, hasn't gone further than Senji's Corner. That's going to suck if I want to meet a player of my guild who may be over here, for example, or even in a totally different continent, say, Alona. So the nice thing that guild halls offered you was the ability from anywhere you were in the world, you and your guildies could press G to pull up the guild panel. This obviously looks a little bit different to the Guild Wars 2 guild panel, but up here on the top right, they had a little button that you could click that says guild hall, and this would take you immediately to that location. If I were to click this with my friends, we'd all suddenly appear there. Say we needed 8 of us to do a mission. We've been chatting to each other in guild chat. You could say, want to do X, and with just the click of one button, everyone would form up there. So let's do that now. We are now loaded directly into our guild hall. This is the Wizard's Isle. Even better, once we're at the guild hall, if I'm the party leader, I've got all 8 of my friends who are all hanging around here, we're all chatting. We all form up here, and now all I have to do is click leave guild hall again, and it will port me and my entire party, as long as everyone's unlocked the outpost, back to that exact location. So there's no like porting around, there's no traveling. There was a problem in Guild Wars 1 where some areas, say Kamadan here, had a party cap of 4 players. So if you wanted to go somewhere late game in Nightfall, it was irritating because you'd have to split the party to go to Kamadan to then be able to travel further. Well, this managed to get around that, and that was a pretty nice little utility feature that enabled guilds, whether they were PvP guilds or PvE guilds, to very quickly meet up, band up, and then move off anywhere they wanted in the world. So the question you might be wondering is, where is a guild hall? Some MMOs have this kind of, very rarely do it well, have this kind of persistence thing where you can actually buy a plot of land somewhere out there in the world, and this is physically the place where your guild will own, and other guilds that walk over will see that you own those places. That's not how it worked in Guild Wars 1. The guild halls were physically located in the PvP region, which was the Battle Isles. So we're going to go to the Great Temple of Balthazar here. These are the Battle Isles. And here, if I open my big map, you'll notice we've got a bunch of different PvP areas. This is kind of the equivalent of Heart of the Mists, I suppose. So you've got the Great Temple of Balthazar, a big place where lots of PvPers would meet up. And then you've got a bunch of arenas. You've got the random arenas, you've got Heroes Ascent, you've got the Codex Arena. Up here, you can see a green icon. This is the only place you'll find this green icon in the entire game. And this is the Wizard's Isle. So if I click this, it's got a little bit of a description for us. It says the true power interior lies within the guilds. Here, organized teams challenge each other to settle disputes or simply prove their dominance. That's referring to really the biggest feature that Guild Hordes tapped into in the first game. And we can click to travel here. Now, if I was in a different guild that had a different guild hall, the Wizard's Isle is not the only one, they would still see it appear here on their map. They'd see it appear on the same region with the same icon. It's just instead it would say it's a different map, and when they double click it, they wouldn't be loading to the Wizard's Isle, they'd be loading somewhere else. So it's purely instant. It didn't really exist somewhere physically out in someone else's realm, and the most you could do was visit the guild halls of other guilds in your alliance. So this was another Guild Wars 1 feature. It was where guilds could band together, and for example, I've got a bunch of other guilds here. If I want, I can visit the guild hall of ELF, and if I visit them, they have a different guild hall. They have the Imperial Isle. And again, you could use this in many different ways to just meet lots of people who are kind of in your extended circle of friends. So aside from being a place where everyone could meet up, what else is there to do? Now, we can't underestimate the social potential of these places. I think that's one of the main reasons everyone's excited. A lot of us in Guild Wars 2 are excited about guild halls because it's going to be a really easy core place. We're assuming this feature where we can just sort of port in wherever we want is going to be coming back, and it's going to be a really nice place to just hang out and chill with the people you only really want to chill with. I am, as I say, a little bit scared with how that will affect the population of the general game world and meeting random and new people, but hey, that's going to be a big part of it. But what else could you do? Well, guild halls did have something of an upgrade system. Upgrades in guilds are nothing like they are in Guild Wars 2, where you've got a lot more depth there. You have influence, you have guild currencies, you've got merits, you've got all kinds of stuff to upgrade and support guilds. Those kind of features didn't exist in Guild Wars 1. However, there was the ability to buy NPCs for your guild hall, so it's really not that useful if it's just a place where you can stand around. Wouldn't it be more useful if it had merchants that you can sell to, so no matter what you're doing in the whole world, you can sort of ping yourself back here and then, for example, sell to this merchant guy here? So there is something of a rudimentary system for upgrading your guild hall. Physically, terrain-wise, this is always going to look like this. The only thing you could impact really were the NPCs who appeared here. There was an update much later on in the game where they added a bunch of henchmen, as you can see here, and these were actually named after prominent PvPers in Guild Wars 1. But there are some more useful NPCs as well. So we got the weaponsmith here. The best way to show you guys what exactly you could get is by speaking to this guy here, the Guild Lord, who I'll mention again in a second. But while we're here, if we speak to him, he says to us, select a service from my list below, then click add service to add it to your guild hall. It's not even like he's got real dialogue. It's just a very, very basic system where he's a vendor and you can buy, say, a Unilite agent. And now this will add Unilite storage to the guild hall. We could add die traders, a trader who sells dies at market prices that were determined by supply and demand. We could add a crafting material trader, rare crafting material trader, a rune trader, a scroll trainer, a skill trainer, a priest of Balthazar that allowed you to unlock skills and buy stuff with Balthazar faction, a regular merchant, a weaponsmith, a guild embler. We'll talk to him in a second. It's just the same idea as in Guild Wars 2. We've got the Canthan ambassador, who will allow you to buy different guild halls, and lastly a festival hat keeper. There you go, that's the upgrades for Guild Wars 1. You'll see my guild at the moment here. We've got everything except the crafting material trader and the skill trainer. Now, this was 100 platinum. This is actually fairly expensive, especially at launch. When these first came out, this was very, very expensive. But don't forget, the idea was the guild as a whole in unison would kind of be putting money in the pool to buy these upgrades. It's kind of interesting to me that there was no infrastructure there to stop kind of scamming style behavior. You know, you would have situations where everyone would be donating money to their guild leaders. Their guild leader would have tons of it, and then you're just kind of trusting that they would spend it at the guild lord to buy the upgrades. You know, there's a lot more stuff in place with Guild Wars 2 to prevent those kinds of things from happening. But yeah, this was it. This was upgrading guild halls. However, because it was there in Guild Wars 1, I am expecting some kind of upgraded system in Guild Wars 2 also. I'm also thinking that because people are so desperate for housing, have always been desperate for housing, always misinterpreted the home instance as some kind of housing function for Guild Wars 2, maybe they're going to try and go above and beyond here. Maybe they will allow us to not just add different vendors to our guild hall, but maybe we'll be able to physically alter terrain too. Maybe we'll be able to actually adjust the physical look of the place. But again, that's just pure speculation. So that's the idea of upgrading our hall. That's some extra benefits we can get from coming here. There's actually two specific NPCs you don't really have to upgrade that I would often find myself coming to, and these are the Alliance Battle NPCs. These guys would port you into the Kurzik versus Luxon faction PvP game types that were very specific to Canthan stuff, and you found yourself coming here all the time. So this was a big reason I would always come back to guild halls. But is that enough? What else could you do here? Well, you could GVG. Now, I will specify straight away, as far as Guild versus Guild is concerned, it was a very cool game type, a game type I have posthumously learned a fair bit about, but never really participated in too much. It was kind of the de facto Guild Wars 2 PvP game type, except perhaps outside of Heroes Ascent. But really, Guild versus Guilds were where it was at, and they were staged from your guild halls. So the game type itself was resembled a little of something like Stronghold that we can now see in Guild Wars 2 that's coming for Heart of Thorns. The idea was you had to ultimately kill the enemy guild lord, or the enemy had to kill your guild lord. This guy right here. So this map is not just a place to meet up, but you actually notice physically, I can't really show you because we don't get a very convincing mini-map, but this map is actually a PvP map we are stood in right now. If I run out of this gate and give you guys a full look at how far we can travel across it, this is where we would be PvPing. And so the idea is, there was actually something of a home advantage benefit in Guild Wars 1. This is one of the more exciting things about GVG that I really regret Guild Wars 2 has nothing similar. Why you would pick the Wizard's Isle means more than just the way it looks or where the NPCs are all positioned when it comes to GVG, because this means that when you're fighting against other guilds, you're either fighting on their guild hall or they're fighting on yours. So you're going to pick the guild hall for your guild that you know very well, that your PvP team has the best strats for winning on, that you have the most practice on. There really is this idea of home advantage. And because there were many different maps like this, guilds had to learn how to tackle each one and traverse the terrain and look at their individual mechanics. You know, the fact that there might be lava on some of them, or different chokes, or different splits that they can do. You had to learn them all, but then you were really going to pick one that you would end up putting a lot of your matches and your games on, and that was your home guild hall. So I really like this idea of home advantage, and this is why guild halls really doubled up. This is why right now, if I stop moving, you guys can see here, this, I have a button here that says Guild Battle, and while we were here, when I'd say I'd formed up with all 8 of my other players, I could click Guild Battle, and I could matchmaking. Now, if you try this nowadays, as far as I'm aware, some people do still GVG, they just kind of make sure they sync up the right time, so it is still something, but obviously there's not like hundreds of guilds out there. The idea of being in the top 100 doesn't mean anything anymore. This video is really not to explain about Guild versus Guild, but this was one of the primary functions of Guild Halls, and it tied very, very heavily into the Guild versus Guild game type. So, one thing some people are maybe wondering about is, hey, are the guild halls in Guild Wars 2 gonna also be like stronghold maps? I think this is very unlikely. I think we just have one stronghold map, and I think that guild halls are going to be something separate. Guild halls aren't going to have this very, very core, tight PvP tie to them. I think they're actually going to offer a lot more for PvE players as well, and it's not so much going to be about GVGs. However, for those of us like PvE scrubs back in the past, or those more casual PvPers, the guild hall did offer something else, and this GVG function did offer something else for us, and this was you could just play a small scrimmage. And in this way, you could actually play against other members of your guild at any party size. So what this actually meant in practice was a lot of players, and a big thing many of us did with guild halls in the first game was we would use them to 1 versus 1 one another. Now, you can technically 1v1 each other already in Guild Wars 2 through Heart of the Mists. However, it's a feature a lot of people have been asking for. And when I think Guild Halls, I do think a little bit to do with like these small scrimmages you used to be able to do, or 2v2s or 3v3s or whatever. And because a lot of people want kind of that PvE style 1v1s, I wonder whether they're going to tie into that, at least in some small respect. You know, the ability to 1v1 people or test out in 1v1 combat your PvE builds and your World vs. World builds without having to wander around in giant empty World vs. World maps forever, or completely change balance and lose your ascended benefits and lose your food and stuff by going to Heart of the Mist. There is that niche there. Will they fill it eventually? Who can say? So the last thing I really want to show you guys about guild halls, and really there's not too much more to say, it's just kind of the variety of guild halls you could play in. Now, this is a Canthan ambassador. These are the NPCs you would speak to give yourself a guild hall. I'll give you guys some of the dialogue about it, because really this is all we had. This guy says, "Is your guild in need of a guild hall? Then you come to the right place. By the authority of the Emperor of Cantha and the illustrious Celestial Ministry, I am permitted to grant any worthy guild an island, complete with a ready-made guild hall." So we can say, hey, I got a few questions. He says, I'm more than happy to answer your questions. We say, why should I deal with the Canthans? He says, you will not be granted a guild hall anywhere on the mainland. Okay, so this is kind of their explanation for why it's out somewhere in the boonies, shall we say. But you can petition me for territory of one of the many islands controlled by Cantha. I wonder then whether the Guild Wars 2 guild halls are going to take this island idea. And it's just, like, the Battle Isles, I doubt we'll be coming back to the Battle Isles. Like, where are they going to exist? I think the easiest excuse ArenaNet have is to just put them in the mists somewhere. The mists are a really, really handy thing that they just keep using, I think overusing in Guild Wars 2. But, you know, I'm expecting that more than the Battle Isles. And we say, will my petition be granted? He says, a guild must have a recognized emblem or it cannot be considered a reputable guild. I will also require some sign that the heavens favor your endeavors. Bring me a celestial sigil as a sign that you're favored. So basically we had this idea in Guild Wars 1 where you had to get this item, a Celestial Sigil. And I think very early design for the Celestial Sigil was that only good PvP guilds could get the Sigil and then get a guild hall, because like it was so much more PvP focused. But they changed that very quickly. So you can say, we already have an emblem, but we can say, where can we find a Celestial Sigil? He says, it said that a Sigil is granted to those brave and skillful enough to hold the Hall of Heroes and earn the blessings of the gods. And this was hard, okay? This was like high end. The Zaician contend that the Heroes Ascent on the Battle Isles is the best place to start such a journey. And then they add this extra bit, and they say, however, not everyone can capture the Hall of Heroes. For those who are daunted, the Zaician offer a sigil trading service. Speak to a sigil trader to purchase a sigil. Price, of course, is based on current supply and demand. If the coffers are empty, you may be lucky enough to get one from a Zaician strongbox, or you can always visit Zaician agent, blah, 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 blah. So, there are multiple ways in the end to get one of these. The whole supply and demand thing, I just remember the sigils cost like 10 platinum. Like flat every time. I was sure it was something like that. It really wasn't that expensive is the main thing to take away from this. So I'm wondering again, how expensive is Guild Wars 2's Guild Hall system going to be? And consider as well, we already have stuff like architecture and politics and all that. Will it be built with gold or just raw influence? How long is it going to take? There's so many directions that they could go in here. But this was how it worked in Guild Wars 1. And you can say, oh, we already have a guild banner. So the guild banners, I'll quickly show you, just because I don't see another opportunity like ever on my channel to talk about this. The guild emblems, this was the same. The Guild Wars 2's got very similar systems, so you could just kind of pick what your cape looked like, for example. You need one of these as well, supposedly, to get a guild hall. I didn't even know that before making this video for you guys. But lastly, we can say, all right, what islands can you show me? Once you have a guild hall, even though I've bought loads of upgrades already, if I were to go to a new island, if I were to pick a new one, they'll all transfer over. It was a very common thing for Guild Wars 1 guilds to change their guild halls very frequently, at least in my experience of the guilds I used to be in. But basically you had kind of the original halls, which are the ones we're currently playing on. You got the Warriors Isle, you got the Hunters Isle, Wizards Isle, Frozen Isle, Nomads, and Druids. Also consider the Heart of Thorns. We're getting Druids as a specialization, jungles, guild halls. Are they going to look at their old guild halls as we look through this list? You know, is the Druids Isle going to come back? That would be pretty fitting, right? And then when they added expansions to the game, they added new guild halls. They added new locales. So let's try. So as we come down, you'll see that there's actually, for example, the Isle of Jade. This is a factions guild hall. And not only was this a new location, remember that you could just kind of hang out, but this was also another PvP map. This was a new GVG map, and this was something that more people learned. Because I never GVG'd too much, I really have no full or complete understanding of, you know, how many of these maps were played. But here you can see, here's one of the mechanics in the area, the spiked coral. As we walk around on this map, we actually can get damaged. What's really cool is that you, in theory, had people out there who chose this as their expert map. This was their area of expertise, and this was where they had their home advantage. That's a really, really cool idea to me. And you would have the teleporters that can take you out and deeper into the map. So they were really doubling up in a lot of different ways. So this is one map, but that's the way it works. You know, you had a bunch of different maps that you could choose. I obviously haven't confirmed this, so we can go back to the Wizard's Isle here. And you could just run through a variety of them and pick the one you wanted. So how will Guild Wars 2 do it? Will we have like a bunch of base maps, you know, set in different regions, and then we can upgrade them visually in different ways? Are they going to add more base halls with expansions as they did in Guild Wars 1? I really can't say, but that's the way that the feature worked, guys. That's why people are excited about it. This is something that, you know, a lot of people want, and I think it does go beyond just saying, oh, it's called Guild Wars, why it doesn't have guild halls or GVG, you know, blah, 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 it should have these features. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of superficial logic there, but behind it, actually, I think there are some very real things that could benefit the game from these guild halls. And we'll get our talk with the man, Colin Johansson, just next week. So sit tight for that. I'm going to leave this video with just some footage of alternate guild halls rolling with some ambient noise, so you guys can get a feel. And as we watch, think, hey, maybe these could be coming back. Wouldn't that be exciting? Let me know what you guys think. Hope you enjoyed the tour, and I'll see you next time.